is just a sum of images, a set of images on the model. And the reason why we did that is to remind all those stages of the production of a denture. So we don't want to clarify from A to Z. No, we believe that now, in this moment, the student already knows all those things from the partial denture. Now we'll discuss about the full denture. But once the dentures have been already studied in detail, now we can transfer all the knowledge that we acquired, transfer all this knowledge to the full denture. Yeah, so there's no teeth now. It's a full denture. So it's like with these images, my colleague, Dr. Ionescu, tries to give us like a resume, aide-memoire, like the French say, to help us see all those stages, clinical and technical stages, to produce the full denture. You see, this is alginate. You can tell it immediately. It's a chromatic alginate. It changes color when you mix it, and then it comes back to the original color when it sets. This is a standard tray. The model, which is acrylic resin now, we imagine that this pink model is the oral cavity of the patient. Maxillary, just for exemplifying. It's very important to make an exact measurement of the alginate. See, to know exactly how much we add, and the liquid also has to be exactly measured. You can add it gradually. There is a possibility to make it easier to mix. Other dentists or assistants, they prefer to place all the water from the beginning. It depends, everyone, how they're used. So you see the change of color, and now we can work it. You don't have time in the mouth. You have to work quickly. You see already changed color a little bit, but that's okay. Now it's yellow again. That means, hey, place it in your mouth, but not before softening it with water, and then, taking the impression. That's the preliminary impression. The material sets very quickly. So now the dentist is making the drawing to show the technician the margins where the individual tray will have to the limits of the individual tray will have to stop there. Right? We don't want the individual tray to touch the margins, the upper margins, in between the mobile and the fixed mucosa. That's the AH line. The patient says, "Ach," and so the mobile palate will move, and we know exactly where is the junction between movable palate and fixed palate. And the doctor can also draw a line there with a special chemical pencil, and then that will remain there on the alginate impression. Yeah, that tells the technician exactly, hey, that's where you have to stop. Okay, the tuberosity has to be very well covered, and then I come slowly to this AH line, AH line, and this is very important because this is the way in which the full denture is maintained on place. So this is very important already from the preliminary impression that we see in this image now. We'll say, okay, the impression is not perfect in those regions. There's no problem. There's no problem because this is just a preliminary model. So we send this to the technician with wet tissue, because the material is otherwise loses water and modifies shape. And now we just pour the preliminary model, and we make the individual tray. So again, the technician receives this tray and pours the plaster. Vibrating table. On my advice, this is not needed. The conformer, the green shape-creating cylinder. And now, all comes back to the doctor after what? After the technician on this preliminary model created what? Created the individual tray. So again, the individual tray can be, it's a simple acrylic resin, and can be modified with some thermoplastic material. Sometimes this individual tray is made with light curing material, which is plate shaped, or you can mix powder and liquid and then create. This is a little bit more difficult. It's cheaper. But look what my colleague is demonstrating here. She is adding, actually the dentist now, we're in the office now. The dentist, it's a clinical phase, the dentist is adding this material, which is a thermoplastic material, to make sure that you have the perfect closure at the cul-de-sac, as the French call it, the limits between the fixed and removable, mobile mucosa. Right. So it's very nice to see the contrast of color between the two materials. There's also a possibility to use a red material, but then the visibility is less clear. You know, the red and green is a perfect contrast. So now the question is, why would the doctor want to prolong this individual tray? Well, in order to know exactly where the mucosa, the mobile mucosa, comes in junction with the fixed one. So the patient will make the movements while this material is hardening, yes, and then the copy of the margin will be perfect, exactly where the fixed mucosa is continued with the mobile one. Because if you have the mobile mucosa pressed, then during the mobility in the mouth, the denture of the mobility of the cheeks, the denture will be simply thrown out, and it will fall down. So it has to be customized. You see, customized. The margins are customized, and the patient will move the muscles and do all the movements necessary in order to customize this material. You can use such a material. You can use wax. Wax is also thermoplastic, but stays also buccoplastic. But this is better. This is better because it's stronger. This material is stronger. So again, the modeling here is done by the muscles of the patient, right? Trying to whistle, trying to move, trying to move the cheeks, and then we will know where exactly the closing margins of the denture will have to be placed. This is actually the big deal in doing this. The mandibulars also, they have the full mandibular dentures. They need to have this properly done. Although they sit in place by gravitation, that's true, but the muscles can displace it quickly, the lower denture as well. So there is even more important, but it's equally important, I should say, in upper and lower dentures, to have this perfect closure at the margin. I don't want to insist that on that. This is just a practical demonstration. So that's how the material is placed. Yeah, it's warmed and placed there. Then, of course, the whole structure will be warmed again, obviously. Most likely in a water basin with hot water. I mean, yeah, warm water. But if the first closure is okay, if the individual tray sits perfectly and exhibits suction, I don't need to do that anymore. This is not compulsory to be done. We do it only if we want to have a better fit at that level. There are dentists who really want to have the best possible fit, so they always do that. It depends. So now we go to the patient. We are at the patient now. We did that chair side. That material was placed in the mouth while still warm, as we said, and now it's ready for the final impression. My colleague places a little bit more than necessary. Normally it should be 1-to-1, but she knows why she's doing that, because we work on the model. The model is not warm like the oral cavity, so it would take too much to polymerize in this cold environment. So that's why she placed a little bit more catalyst, the red one. So this is mixed. This is mixed with large movements, okay. And then she places this material here in the individual tray. So now understand, this individual tray has previously been placed in the mouth, and the margins were perfectly determined while this thermoplastic green material was still soft. Now this is a little bit, I should have placed a little bit more material. See how carefully the margins are covered with material. Okay. The palatal aspect will probably be covered with less silicone, because there we had the perfect impression in the beginning. So we make the impression, and then the technician places the again, once the impression was made, upper and lower, the technician creates two models, maxillary and mandible. Suppose there's two total full dentures, right? Upper and lower. Two models, right? One is maxillary, the other one is mandible. Functional models, final models. Okay, if mandible had teeth, okay, that would have been the antagonist, the teeth at the mandible. Okay. But anyhow, once you have the final impression, the functional impression, the technician gets, by pouring into it plaster, gets the functional model. Okay, but how to relate the upper jaw to the lower jaw? And on those functional models, the technician creates, as you see in this picture, the occlusion templates. So now we do two dentures, upper and lower. Those are the occlusal templates. And look what happens. When the patient takes those templates, come from the lab, the technician made them just like that on two models. He didn't know where to put this yellowish wax, you see. There's no relationship in between those two templates, occlusion templates. I received them now. I'm a dentist. And when I put them into the mouth, of course they don't fit. They are like, whoa, nothing to do. There's, whew, what am I doing now? There's a contact on the one side, there's no contact on the other side. What am I doing now? It's very easy. What I have to do as a dentist, I have to trim from the wax. Where do I start, maxillary or mandible? Well, very simple. Always mandible first. Always I create the margin of the occlusal template from the mandible, at the mandible, to give the occlusal plan at the mandible. Okay, there are some rules. Probably you know them from the seminaries, but the lower centrals should sit at the level of the lower lip. So that's the place where we try to put them. A little bit higher, a little bit lower, but around that level. Okay? So then the technician will know this is where you want to place the lower incisors, the edge of the lower incisors. Again, the level of the lower lip. So you can only decide that while those templates are in the mouth. So that's how you start the template of the lower jaw. At the lower lip, in between the two central incisors, lower central incisors. And then you want to continue the margin of this template somewhere to the half of the mandible ramus, or the junction between the upper and the lower lip, the commissure as it is called. And yes, there is a variability here, so it's not very easy to do that. And that's why when we place the teeth, upper and lower, we will check it in the mouth to see if it really fits perfectly. This is a position that may not be the very, very exact and final one. Okay, but again, on the mandible we have to create the occlusal plan the best we can make, and then the maxillary will trim slowly in order to make it fit with the one at the mandible, and to have almost perfect closure while the patient sits in the vertical occlusal dimension that we can estimate, for example, with the 3 levels of the face. This is the most complicated part, really. That's the most difficult part, to determine the bite. Now let's suppose that we did it correctly. What do we do now? We take those templates, occlusion templates, we warm it. Some people do the same at the mandible. I think that's the best. You see, there's not too much warming of it. I mean, it's just the surface, just to make sure that the two will sit one next to the other and will glue on a very thin layer of wax that has been warmed. And you see now the mandible, same thing. So there are colleagues who go deep into the template. That's wrong. You shouldn't do that. And then the patient bites and everything is slippery and the patient moves who knows how, and no, that's not the right thing. So you have to trim at the very beginning, and then a little bit of warming, maybe 0.5 millimeter into the wax, upper and lower, and then this will be placed in the mouth of the patient. It's not easy if there are two especially. Now imagine this is not on the model. This is in the patient's mouth, right? So now we clarify here what we have to understand it very well. The first one is the smile line, and we suppose that from this we will start the cervical parts of the centrals, and the length of it will decide it, and so that's one of the ways, okay, to do it. The midline, the vertical line, and the line of the canines. Somewhere close to the ala nasorum, the wings of the nose, as they're called. But what we see clearly here is that those templates were fixed with some metal fixing devices. There's also a connection between the wax, upper and lower wax, because they were warm. And while the patient has this in the mouth, the doctor makes those markings so that the technician may know exactly where to place the teeth. But the technician may also make some modifications. Normally you should take a picture after you do that. And then the patient will judge, did the dentist draw the lines perfectly well or not? Okay. So placing the teeth can be difficult, but this information is the minimum of information that the dentist can give to the technician. But again, the technician can ask more information, pictures or something, in order to place the teeth in a better way. Because the final aspect of the patient is very, very important. Yeah, if you draw this upper line there, the smile line, this is highly dependent on how much the patient has smiled with those templates in the mouth. So the technician again can need a picture to understand more when seeing the image of the patient and those drawings. The technician will understand better exactly where he needs to try to initially place the teeth, and then he may modify according to the second picture that is taken when the dentist receives the wax pattern with the teeth and tests it into the patient's mouth. Now, the technician receives this, as we said. This is one individual. This is the template, and this template was done on the final model. If they were done on the preliminary models, they wouldn't fit perfectly on the final models. That's for sure. They wouldn't have sit on the master model or the functional model. The mouth of the patient is not the same. Well, yes, but at every impression, the mucosa moves slightly. So yeah, it may give you differences. So this is compulsory to make those occlusal templates on the final models or the functional models, right? So the position of the two was done into the mouth of the patient, and now the technician is positioning his models in the articulator in the same relative relationship as in the mouth. That's the position. That's a relationship. So now you see a plate. You see what the technician is doing? He placed this plate. It's quite thin. Placed it on the mandible. And what is he doing? Takes a pencil and marks the upper one, the upper template. Why? Because here he will have to place the teeth. But how does the technician know that? Well, he knows because the dentist tells him. Because the dentist noticed that this margin of wax is so well positioned, the dentist can change the position of it, is so well positioned that the lip sits nicely on it. Okay, so if I place if I place the teeth at the same level, well, the lip will sit on something. Okay, it will not be pushed away, it will not sit inside of the face, but it will sit really on the right position to make the patient look natural. So the technician takes that into account, marks this margin and says, okay, so my teeth, the teeth that I'm placing, they should sit there. So now on this plate you see the technician is copying this markings, midline, canines, everything. And now, of course, you take the occlusion templates away and you put wax, foil of wax, 2 millimeters, and then you place the teeth. That's it. You place them individually, maxillary and mandible, in occlusion, of course. So now you see two full dentures, upper and lower. You see the upper one. And now comes the lower one. This is wax. Okay, what you see white there, this is wax. It's white, pink. That's just that this is yellow. And then pink wax, doesn't matter. Pink or yellow, that's wax. Okay, 2 millimeter thickness wax. And the teeth placed in this wax. So the technician has to check that they are placed correctly, occlusion, whatever. And those patterns, wax patterns with teeth, they are sent to the dentist to make the final check in the patient's mouth. Okay, if the dentist says that's okay, the teeth are properly placed and the patient looks nice with that, everything is nice. Once this is done and everybody's happy with that, then we will have to transform the wax into resin, right? So aesthetics is important in the frontal region, not that much in the lateral region. There you want to avoid undercuts and retentive surfaces or modeling, retentive modeling. So, as you saw in previous videos, the technician is blowing air, hot air, on the wax to make it very smooth. Yeah, and then with a scalpel makes the final retouches of the gingival margins, papilla, everything. And then we place it in plaster. In two stages in plaster, as we shall see now. So those are the conformers, as we call them. This is very old stuff. So what is the technician doing? Takes this denture, see the maxillary here, the mandible is the same. So takes the whole thing, the model and the denture, they sit together, denture and model. And so at the end, probably the model will be destroyed, right? Because it will be embedded now in plaster. So, again, the technician will pour plaster up to the half. Yeah, the half of this conformer. So we call it time one, first stage. Some technicians put a little bit more plaster to half of the denture. It depends. So once the plaster has a set, we do the second set of the investment. Now the second time, the second step, we pour plaster in the second part of the conformer. And then we place a lid on the top. So again, now suppose this was plaster there, the plaster set, okay, we placed an isolating liquid there so that the plaster from the second stage will not stick to the plaster from the first stage. Once all this is done, you can imagine that this has been already done now. Then the technician puts the second plaster and the second part of the ring, and in this second part of the ring again, the second part of the plaster. Okay, so it's more suggestive than demonstrative. And then places the lid. Okay, so now you imagine there's plaster covering all that is inside now. We engulfed everything in plaster, but in two stages. Stage 1, stage 2, right? Okay. Now we wait the set of the plaster in the second stage, and then I can open it. I can open it and the teeth sit in the second stage of plaster and the model sits on the first stage of plaster. Okay, now I remove the wax with hot water, and what am I getting? The two components. Let's see them. Look, that's the model. Here we had the denture, the wax. Now the wax has been washed away. This is the model in the plaster from the stage 1. The technician is isolating this model, and the wax is gone, and now instead of it we will place the acrylic resin. That will take the place of the wax, but we don't want the wax to get glued, to stick to the plaster. No, we want it to isolate the plaster in order that the acrylic resin will quickly be removed from that plaster at the end, right? After we polymerize this resin. So that's why we isolate here. We isolate also on the counterpart on the second time, which is second stage. But pay attention not to isolate the teeth. Okay, so this has to be done very carefully, not on the teeth, because those teeth then will be removed from. They will not be in contact with the resin, and they will be thrown away. So this is simple. Here it's more difficult. Here is more difficult. Has to be done very carefully. You see how many things the technician has to do. It's not easy. Okay, so isolation of the first stage, as we call it. Okay. So again, I've written here in Romanian. Pay attention what I said before. Isolating around the teeth, but don't touch the place where the teeth sit in resin. Yeah. And now the acrylic resin. This is just a suggestion because it's a little bit of resin. Normally we put much more, yeah, to do the denture. But this is just for demonstration, just a suggestion. So we mix it until it gets to a plastic phase, and then when it gets to that phase, we place it in the maxillary, in the mandible. I mean, yeah, both in the mandible and mandible. In the first time and in the second time too, first stage and second stage as well, and then we will place that under. We'll cover one to the other. We'll close it, and we'll put it under a press, so that the two components will sit exactly one on top of the other. There's a hydraulic press, right? And then the excess resin will be really squeezed away. Squeezed away, that's the word, squeezed away. And you see, now we press it. We press it, and once we press it, when the press sits like, working zone, we will see that those two components sit very well. They come in touch. Okay, and the excess of resin is coming up, out on that side. Yeah. Without this press, we cannot do that, so the denture will be higher than normal. But once you have this press, that's okay. So once this is done, you have to take all this and place it in the polymerizing pot. But the question is, don't this go away? Well, in order to make sure that they don't move away, I put it into a ring. You see, this one has been placed many times in water. That's why you see the rust there. Okay, so this is how we contain everything. After we took it out from the press, we press it again, keep it in that position with this screw, with this retainer, with this ring. And this is how we place it in the water to polymerize. Most likely this lid does not belong to this conformer, but that's another story. Okay, you understand the idea.